Alrighty, folks, welcome back to another episode of The Story of a Somebody. Today I have a special guest with me, Amanda Lee. She's an author and a domestic violence survivor. She has two books out, one a memoir and a children's book that she recently put out. Amanda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Amanda, can we talk about a little bit about your younger years before we get into the other stuff? Because that's where I mostly start with all my guests. Let's talk about your early childhood.
Okay.
What can you tell me?
Yeah, I mean, from what I can remember,
Yeah.
no, I had a normal upbringing. My parents are still together. I have two older siblings. I'm the youngest of three, by a lot. My brother is 13 years older than me. My sister is 11 years older than me. So I had siblings, but I also had a little bit of the only child syndrome as well. Um, and I was raised in a loving house. Middle class suburbs of Philadelphia. Um, yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything. I didn't have any trauma, thank God. I didn't have any significant things happen in my childhood. It was a normal everyday childhood.
Were you ever bullied in school or anything like that?
I was never bullied in school. And in fact, I hate to admit it, but I was a mean girl in high school.
Oh,
I
okay.
was, and I'm not proud of that fact.
Hmm.
But looking back at like the way I treated other people in high school, I'm so ashamed. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you just purposely ignore people or, decide to be not want to be someone's friend and not explain why? And I think it really kind of stems from I had low self-esteem. I didn't really come into my own until junior and senior year of high school. I always was before that. I was the friend. Oh, Amanda's so nice. I was never the girl that anyone wanted to date or, thought was hot or anything like that. I was just like, oh, she's funny. She's a good friend. And I think once those tables started to turn, um, that's when I went through my Regina George stage.
Did you ever try drugs or alcohol in middle school or high school?
Um, Not drugs, but I mean, sorry, mom, if you're watching, definitely drank.
Normal teenage stuff.
Normal teenage stuff, which like now I was talking to my best friend since I was in middle school, and we're like, we would never get away with the things that we did. I mean, we would be in the middle of the woods drinking, or there was one time we climbed on the roof of our old elementary school. Like now with like Live 360 and there's no way we would have gotten away with anything we did.
No, never getting away with that stuff nowadays.
No. And as a mom, I'm happy about that.
So let's move forward to college. This,
um,
yeah.
I mean, I had a great college experience. I had some health issues during college. I was diagnosed with a heart condition. Nothing,
Oh,
se- nothing serious. Like I didn't need a heart surgery or anything. I would get dizzy and I would pass out occasionally. And that happened sophomore year of college. And also I was a little lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do, which, is a little unrealistic to ask 18-year-olds to decide on what you want to do for the rest of your life.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I was changing majors and I ended up switching colleges and came home to Philadelphia to finish out my college career. And, it was a good experience. I met some lifelong friends, and when I transferred to Temple, I went into political science and ended up getting an internship with the now governor of Pennsylvania.
So you were studying politics first.
Yep, I studied
Okay.
politics, and in typical like 20-year-old fashion, I was like, I love the West Wing. Like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Like, what was I thinking? And yeah, I I was in politics in Pennsylvania for 7 years. My internship led to a job, and I was now Governor Shapiro's executive assistant for 7 years.
Wow. You
No,
go, girl.
thank you.
I know your parents were proud of you for that one.
Yeah.
Um, so let's get right into it. You meet your ex-husband in college?
No, I had a series of serious boyfriends before him, and I mean,
Okay.
they weren't bad guys, and at least one of them I'm still taught my high school boyfriend. We occasionally like will message each other when something happens and it reminds us of one another. Like none of them were bad guys. It's just looking back, they weren't the right fit. They
That's
really weren't. Like it
that's
just there was something that just wasn't there. And I was in my late 20s. It's like
okay.
28. I had been a bridesmaid 10 times. And I was like, all right, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done celebrating other people. Now, like, after we've done all the weddings, now people are having babies. And I'm like, I'm done. I am done. I am ready for my turn. And enter my ex husband. And, you know, he kind of felt the same way I did. He had been, a bunch of his friends had gotten married. Some of them were starting to have children. And he was like, I'm done. Like, I'm ready to settle down. And, you know, we met each other at that moment.
And I did read the preface of your book. I have not had a chance to read it, but I am dying to read it.
Thank you.
And I was already crying, like I told you
You
when I
told
read
me.
that. Yes, because
Like, you
I
haven't
just,
even gotten to the sad parts yet.
well, it was already sad for me. Already sad for me. And I'm sorry for getting that wrong. I thought I read that you had met him while you were in college.
Oh, no, 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 totally fine.
And how long did the relationship last?
We were together. We were married for 7 years. We were together for 9.
And you have how many kids with him?
We have 2 children.
How old are your kids now?
I have a little boy who's 8 and a little girl who's 7.
Aw.
Yeah. They're a handful.
Do you want to touch a little bit about what happened in your relationship?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You know, the misconception when it comes to abusive relationships is that it's like everything's, you know, rainbows and unicorns, and then all of a sudden it becomes abusive. And that's not the reality of it. It's a slow trickle of abuse till one day you're like, wait, how did this happen? How am I in this situation? And that's very much what happened with us. It was a slow trickle. It was a slow chipping away of my self-esteem. It was a slow buildup until I felt trapped and I didn't think I could go anywhere. I had believed what all the things he had told me of how I wouldn't be able to survive without him.
Yes.
Um, until one day, it was August 3rd, 2019, we had a fight, um, and he threatened to kill me and the children and threatened to burn our house down with us in there. Went as far as got a gas can and a lighter. And he rounded the corner with the gas can and lighter, and it was 8:59 at night. Will remember the time. And I ran up the stairs. I grabbed my 5 and 3-year-old at the time, and we booked it out of our house to my neighbor who was a police officer.
I was wondering, and I'm sure we can read it in the book, but
Mhm.
did your kids ever suffer abuse or did they ever see you getting abused?
They did. They definitely they heard the verbal abuse. And in
Hmm.
fact, one of the moments when it was almost like I woke up, I realized what was happening. And I knew I had to get out, and I was trying to figure out a safe way to leave. Was he was yelling at me about something. I think it was we had just moved, and Amazon didn't get the memo that we moved. So my Amazon credit card, I didn't pay because I didn't get the bill, and it dinged my credit, and we were trying to refinance. And he was yelling at me about my credit and was calling me every name in the book, very close to my face, spitting on me. And for whatever reason, he left. He just stopped talking to me and walked away. And I remember thinking, where are the kids? And I went, like, our kitchen was right here, and like the couch was right here. And I walked around to the couch, and I saw my daughter, who was 3 at the time, and she was just slowly crying.
Aw.
And my son was holding her hand and was saying, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And I was like, "All right, this is not okay." My 5-year-old should not be. I mean, part of me was proud that he was comforting his sister and not just ignoring her, but
Yeah,
this is not the what I want my children to grow up in.
exactly. Did you ever fight back?
Yeah, I did.
That's good.
I
That's
did.
good. Yeah.
I definitely did. I definitely yelled back. I definitely called him names at times. I would try to reason with him and be like, "Do you want someone to talk to our daughter like this? Well, how would you feel if we heard our son speak to his wife like this?"
Hmm.
It didn't work. It would just anger him more.
I understand. So let's talk about some more forms of domestic violence other than physical abuse.
Mhm. So I experienced verbal abuse most of the time.
Most
It
of the
was
time.
verbal abuse, and it's not just the name calling, it's also the chipping away at your self-esteem. It's making you believe that you can't actually do anything without the other person. He
Yeah.
had me convinced that I was the world's worst driver, to the point where I didn't want to drive anywhere unless it was to work. Like, I did not want to drive. I was worried the entire time. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not like the world's best driver. But I'm not, you when you get in the car with me, you're not taking your life in your hands. But it's stuff like that. I convinced that I couldn't cook anything. Like, and turns out like I'm actually a really good cook.
I bet.
So, it's things like that. It's also, there's psychological abuse, there's
Hmm.
financial abuse.
I was going to ask you that. Did he ever like keep money from you or anything like that? Take your
Yes,
paychecks?
he did keep money from me. And the day after everything happened, I called our best friends, who now are my best friends,
Hmm.
not his, but I called them to like, please come down and help me. I need to change locks. I need to do. And my friend Blair came down and he went to our basement and he's like, Amanda, do you know your safe is open? And we were about to leave for vacation that day, which obviously was canceled. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I've left it open. I was getting the passports. And he's like, do you know that you have like $5,000 in cash in the safe? And I went, no, no, I definitely didn't know. No. And I went down and I counted it, and it was just under $5,000 that I had no idea existed. And then when we were going through the divorce, and when you go through divorce, you've got to issue discoveries, and you find out all this information. And he had several offshore accounts that he liquidated.
He didn't
And
want you to have the money in the divorce.
yeah, and apparently he was sitting on 40 grand in his checking account. Meanwhile, I was paying for everything on a teacher salary, which is not nearly as much money as he was making,
Yeah.
struggling with credit card debt because I was trying to pay for everything. Now, I mean, he did pay the mortgage, which was substantial, but I paid food, clothing, everything for the kids.
Yeah.
You know, I paid for everything.
I'm sorry to hear that. I know it's
Well,
crazy. It's
yeah, and
crazy.
yeah. So, I mean, I was not vindictive during any of this. At least I don't feel. Except when I did find the $5,000, I went to Nordstrom's and had a shopping spree.
Hey, cha-ching.
I was like, you know what?
You deserved it, girl.
I deserve this.
You damn right you did. Let's talk about behaviors that abusive partners exhibit to keep you trapped in a relationship.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. What type of stuff would he do? I mean, besides the verbal abuse, like threaten
Yeah.
to kill you, like you said,
Yeah.
psych- psychologically, mentally
Yeah, I mean,
ill.
it's the
Yeah,
psychological stuff. It's the slow chipping away. It's the you slowly believing everything they're saying. It's not all
yeah,
at once. It's not like we were taking a walk one day and he was like, "You're the worst driver ever. You can't cook and no one's ever going to want you and you can't survive without me." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It's slow and it's deliberate, and eventually you're like, "Oh, yeah. Well, I can't leave because I I can't financially survive without him.
Did
Yeah,
he
you're
ever
right.
like did he ever like control what you wore?
He definitely had opinions on what I wore if we were going out. I definitely got his opinions. And there were times that I would be like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. I
Maybe
should
he's
wear
right.
this. Maybe
Yeah.
he's right." And there were other times where I was like, "F you. I'm going to wear what I want."
Exactly. Thank you. Why do you think it feels like it's impossible to leave?
Well, I think it's part of the abuse.
Mhm.
That is part of the control of the abuser is that they want you to believe you cannot survive without them.
Yes.
Um, and it's also, it's what you're used to. It's not healthy, but it's what you're used to. And then,
Mhm.
the prospect of being a single parent is daunting. Just it is.
It
And
is.
it also is like for me when I was trying to figure out how once I realized, which sounds ridiculous that I didn't realize, but I didn't. I was in like a daze for many years. Part of it is because I have two small children who are very close in age, but the other part is it was just, you kind of like go inward because you're trying to survive in an
Mhm.
abusive relationship.
You just go through the motions.
You go through the motions, exactly.
Yeah.
And part of why I stayed and what I was really trying to figure out, like, what do I do? Is I was worried if I'm not there every day with my children, how am I going to protect them?
Exactly. I can
Wh-
definitely relate
What
to
if
you.
what if he flips and starts doing what he did to me to them? How am I going to protect two small children if I'm not with them every day?
It probably crossed your mind all day at work. All
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, oh, I changed schedules around. I would leave work early. I missed happy hours, baby showers,
Mhm.
bridal showers, all of the things because I didn't want to leave them home alone with him for very long.
And I understand that. Were there any red flags? Your friends ever like be like, "I know this guy, you don't wanna get involved with him," or anything like that? Anybody ever try to warn you?
Oh, there were a million red flags and I ignored them and I want to shake my younger self. Like what
Mhm.
were you thinking? I remember in the beginning of our relationship, particularly the women in his life would like his brother's girlfriend and girls that were his friends would be like, "Oh yeah, he's great, but watch out for his temper." Oh yeah, there was this one time him and his brother had a fight. I thought we were going to have to call the police. Oh yeah, and it was all these stories and I had never seen evidence of a temper. So I was just like,
Hmm.
I don't know what they're talking about. Like he's fine.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until almost like a year into the relationship I first saw evidence of any type of anger issue.
How many times did you try to leave?
I don't know that I ever really tried.
Oh, okay.
I didn't, I didn't.
You ever leave just for a day and be like, "Oh, things will get better," or anything like that?
No, I was so scared. I was scared to leave. And I also, once that ring went on my finger, once we got engaged, I felt trapped. I felt
Yeah.
like I couldn't leave. My parents were planning this big, expensive wedding. I had my grandmother's wedding engagement ring on my finger, which I had wanted since, as far as I can remember, since I was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
It's finally on my hands. I have a piece of her with me at all times. I felt like I couldn't leave. So leaving was never something that it was maybe like a far off dream, but it was never something that I thought was going to be possible. And then the summer of 2019, it really became evident to me that I had to get out and I was trying to figure out how to do it safely, what that would look like. And then my hand got forced when he threatened to burn our house down.
Did you ever think that having kids by him would make him change?
Yes.
Me too. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I thought um when I was pregnant with our son, I thought, okay, this is once he holds that baby, it's all going to click.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It made it worse.
Mhm. It
It
does.
it made it worse.
Well, how do you overcome feelings of shame? Like, it's hard to tell people that you're being abused or going through that type of
Mhm.
stuff. So, I mean, how do you overcome that?
I don't know that I have. It's hard. It's hard to admit that I went through this. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm a badass. Like I have 2
I can
master's
tell.
degrees. I'm from Philly. I don't take anyone's crap. And like, and have to admit that I was in a domestic, or I was in an abusive relationship. And it's a hard pill to swallow for
Mhm.
myself. And it's a hard thing to admit. One of the hardest things I did, and I've talked about it before, is when I had to call my parents
Yeah.
and tell them what was going on. And I couldn't even get the words out. I was crying so hard. And it's just, you've got to, and I just constantly remind myself, I've also had a ton of therapy, but I constantly remind myself that I'm not the one who should be ashamed.
No.
It wasn't my behavior. Regardless of what I've been told for 9 years, my behavior did not cause him to be abusive.
It's not so much that. I just think sometimes we feel ashamed that we didn't leave early enough. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
we should have got out sooner. You know,
Yeah.
that kind of feels a little bit shameful.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Well, hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? Like we can look
yeah.
back and be like, why didn't you leave him then? Why didn't you leave then? Why didn't you
Hmm.
tell this person when they asked you, why didn't you do this?
So, what type of support networks did you use to rebuild your life after you left him?
Um, I wouldn't be anywhere right now without my parents. I
Yeah.
mean, they came down from Philadelphia and basically moved in with me for a month.
Oh, that's good.
And we're like, what do you need? What do you need? What can we do? And
Yeah.
they were there to make dinner. They were there for support for my kids. They were my financial support in the beginning. They swooped in, and the same for my entire family. My siblings, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my best friends, my neighbors. Well, some of my other neighbors suck, but you know, it my it was right before school started, and my principals and my school family were amazing. It was, what do you need? What can I do? What do you need? And I would not have been able to rebuild my life the way I have if I didn't have that type of support. I really heavily relied, and I had no choice. I am not one who asks for help, but I knew I had no choice. All of a sudden, in a matter of minutes, my life changed. Police were involved. I now
That was
needed
my
to
next
get
question.
I now needed to get lawyers.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have a choice. I was a mess. I knew I needed to rely on people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was my next question. What do you expect from the authorities to navigate the criminal justice system? Like, did you ever file a protection order? Did he go to jail or anything like that?
Yeah, all above.
All of the above.
So I called the police when we fled the house, and they showed up. And I think the fact that my neighbor he's retired now, but he was a police officer at the time, and he was there with me probably helped. And how hysterical I was on 911 because I had 3 police officers show up. I was issued a emergency protective order, which is good for like, I think it was like 72 hours.
Oh, that's good.
Um, and he went to jail just for a few hours and then was released. And then I filed an extension protective order. And then I feel like we were in court like every other week because
Hmm.
he kept extending the time for the permanent protective order hearing. Because then we had to have a criminal hearing because the state pressed charges against him. I didn't
They do
because,
automatically step in. Yes.
yep, they automatically stepped in, which I'm so grateful for. Um, However, while I'm grateful that they did that, I don't know how to phrase this, not thrilled with how I was treated in court by the Commonwealth attorneys. I mean, the logical part of me understands because I had never called the police before. I had never done anything. This was his first offense.
So they didn't believe you.
It was my word against his,
Hmm.
and the only evidence they had earlier that night in the argument, he had thrown water on me. So when the police officer showed up, I was soaked. So there was evidence of assault. So they could only charge him with assault, but because it was his first offense, all he got was essentially a slap on the wrist, and I got a permanent protective order for 2 years.
Lord
which
have mercy.
which led me to yell at the district attorney. I was like, "Listen, like this is why domestic violence victims don't come forward.
Mhm.
I'm
You
too
shame them.
I'm too
Yeah.
scared to call
Mhm.
initially. And now that I have done something, you're just like, well, because you didn't do something earlier, I can just give him probation." It's like,
God.
how is this okay?
It's not. It's
It's
not.
not.
Um, I wanted to ask you about your new romance, and you don't have to tell me too much, but how long have you had a new boyfriend?
I mean, I wish he was here so I could like stand here and praise him because anytime I talk to him, he's like, "You didn't say that." No, he's great. Been together for a little bit, and it's a breath of fresh air. It's when
Different.
when you're in abusive relationships, you hear about like your friends or like TV shows, people who have like a true partner, like
Yeah.
a true teammate, what that's like. And I remember being like, that doesn't really exist. No one's like
Mm-mm.
that.
It's a
And I
fairy
have
tale.
that now. I have that now. I have a true partner in life. Like, for example, I scored Madonna tickets.
Oh, okay.
I am so excited. I thought I calculated the weekends right, where it turns out it's a Saturday night that I have the kids. And he just looked at me, he's like, all right, cool. Go, whatever. Daddy daycare. We'll all be fine. Don't worry about it. Go.
Well, I'm glad
Have fun.
to hear that the kids like him.
They love him. They love him. He has kids. They all love each other.
And
Yeah, we're one big happy family. No, he's my true partner. I'm very lucky.
you're also an advocate for victims too, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I wanted to go over some facts with you.
Yeah.
1 in 4 women and 1 in 4 men will be victims of domestic violence abuse in their lifetime. Boys who witness domestic violence are 2 times as likely to abuse their own partners and children when they become adults. And I have cited my sources if anybody wants to
Mhm.
get technical. Um,
I can vouch for you too. I've heard those before too.
20 people per minute are physically abused, which equals 1 year to 10 million men and women.
Mhm.
And I also would like to point out the Johnny Depp case and the Amber Heard case.
I
I'm really glad he came forward with that because this is something that men do not talk about because they're
mhm.
ashamed that they're being
I
abused by
actually
their spouse.
I was in that courtroom. I sat on
Yeah,
that stand.
you
That
did.
yeah, I went before that judge. Yep.
My goodness, really? You know
Yeah.
them? You know them?
I mean, well, no. When I had to renew my protective order, I
Oh,
was
okay,
in that
okay.
courtroom. I sat on that stand.
I understand
So
now.
when
Sorry.
yeah. No, I don't know Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. That would be really cool if I did though.
Yeah.
I did grow up in the same town as Bradley Cooper though, so there's my claim to
Oh,
fame.
okay. Yeah, so I really praise him for that. I mean, it's a he say she say thing, but I hope more men come forward to
Yeah.
talk about that. It does take 7 attempts to leave, and there is a cycle of violence. You hope for change. That's the
Mhm.
first thing, like when you have your kids, well, maybe that'll make them change.
Mhm.
Then there's the honeymoon cycle. Everything seems so great. Then the tension's building, and then there's a violent incident that happens. And after that, normally abusers are remorseful. They'll tell you they're never going to do it again and things like that. Did you hear that too? Like, I'll never do it again. I'll change. I promise.
I've
Like,
heard I'm ashamed of what I did.
yeah.
I'll go get help. I'll go to counseling. Yeah, I heard it all.
And then they just repeat the cycle after that.
Mhm.
Um, for anyone that does watch this, I wanted to point out the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and that's 1-800-799-7233. We have our own website here for the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and there's a lot of resources on there. And I also looked up for your area the DC Coalition Against
Mhm.
Domestic Violence. And if you need help reaching out in that area, it's 844-443-5732. And they can help you with housing, case management. They'll give you an advocate,
Mhm.
counseling, forensic exams. For physical and sexual assault, they'll examine you. Childcare help, legal help, medical help.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a whole ton of resources
There is.
in your area if you need to get out. There's places to go.
Yeah, and I have to say, You know, I've never met someone who escaped an abusive relationship and regretted it.
Yeah. No,
And I
me
just,
neither.
I've never met anyone who escaped abuse and regretted it. And I want to leave that with people. Like, think about that. No one has ever said, I'm worse off now.
Exactly. And I always like to tell people your material things can be replaced, but you can't. What happens if something happens to you and your kids don't have you anymore? You
Yeah.
know, just get out. Just go to a domestic violence shelter, even the homeless shelter. It's only a temporary solution.
Hmm.
It's not going to last forever. You can rebuild your life,
Yeah,
but if you're gone, then what's next?
exactly.
You know?
Hmm.
So these things really touch my heart. And uh, Amanda, let's plug away. Let's talk about your book, your website. What can we do for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on my website. The emails go directly to me. My website is authораelee.com. You can also find my book, One of the Lucky Ones, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Google Play, and Apple, as well as my children's book, Always.
Are you going to have it come out on Audible? Do you think it'll come out on
It
Audible?
is my
Oh,
my
okay.
memoir is coming out on Audible. She's recording right now, so hopefully March, April.
That's how when I'm at work, because I still work a regular job, that's what I
Hmm.
normally do, listen to books on Audible.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that. Do you have anything new besides the children's books, or do you have anything new that you can talk about?
I mean, that's new right now.
I mean, any more books in
That's
the work?
that's all I got right now. Oh yeah, I love to write. I mean, this is what I want to do. So I'm sure there will be more books.
What about your Instagram? You got
Oh
Instagram?
yeah. I'm old. I forget about social media. Yes, please follow me. I'm at author AE Lee.
My God. Thank you so much, Amanda. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And you and I are such alike. We just discovered that
We have the
we
same
both,
birthday.
yeah. Also, I read that you're not a big fan of flying, and neither am I. I've only flown one time,
I
and that
hate
was to Puerto
flying.
Rico.
I hate flying. I think I'm dying every like 2 minutes. I'll
I
do it. I'll get on the plane, but it's not pretty.
I had anxiety when we were taking off, and then I think on the way back, I started feeling like motion sickness
Hmm.
because I get that really easily in the car, and some lady gave me some pills for that.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure, Amanda. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Everybody,
me.
go out and buy her books. You're not going
Please.
to regret it. Definitely.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.